Welcome to the Elaborate Topics podcast, where we focus on lab-specific strategies for medical laboratory professionals. We're proud to be the healthcare detectives that work behind the scenes to get the results needed to influence medical decisions. Let's grow together and jump right into the lab.
Hi, friends. We're back. We have another episode of Elaborate Topics here for you. Today, we have a roundtable, and our roundtables are always an exciting time because we get to toss around ideas, toss around our experiences, and today is no different. We have another amazing topic for you. But before we get started and jump right in, I am Tywana Wilson. I am here with my co-hosts Lona Small and Stephanie Whitehead. If you just so happen to have been up under a rock and stumbled onto this podcast, we are a weekly podcast that gives you practical strategies that you can use inside and outside of the laboratory. A new episode released each and every Tuesday. And if you desire to be a guest on this show, we would love to have you and your expertise to share with our laboratory colleagues and community around the world. You can find each episode on directimpactbroadcasting.com, your favorite podcast platform, or on LabStream on LabMind. So we are an international podcast. We're excited to bring you different shows and topics each and every week. And you can go back to our catalog of over 150 episodes, and I'm sure you will find something, a topic that could benefit you professionally and or personally. So let's jump right into today's episode. Today, we're going to be talking about team cohesion, teams, team building, the importance of teams. I know that you all are going to be excited about this topic because without having a great team, it definitely will have an impact on your laboratories. Ladies, are you excited to talk about this topic?
I am excited, especially knowing that we need our team so much nowadays with what's happening in terms of staffing and shortages. So I think this is such a valuable topic.
Exactly. I can't wait to dive into it.
Absolutely. So here we go, team cohesion. So we know at each of our laboratories, we have a team, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we have a cohesive team. And team cohesion is essentially the degree of which the members of our team work together effectively towards a common goal. So if we think about how we operate, we always keep the patient at the center of our interactions, right? We want to meet turnaround time. We want to make sure that the clinicians have the results on the chart by the time they do AM runs. So having that team cohesion to reach the goal of delivering quality patient care is a requirement. It's about creating a sense of unity and shared purpose, as well as building strong relationships between our team members. So when we think about this from a laboratory perspective, it's especially important because it can, like I said before, directly impact patient outcomes. Our medical labs rely on our teams to work efficiently and accurately, and any breakdown in communication or even trust between team members can lead to mistakes or delays that could potentially have patient harmful effects or even safety effects within our laboratory team. I think when I think about our laboratory teams and the moving parts, the various disciplines, I mean, from a general or global landscape, our teams are pretty cohesive in the jobs that we do because we can work together with ease and confidence, leading to those better patient outcomes, improved job satisfaction, and higher productivity. So when we think globally, and think about the disciplines coming together, blood bank doing their part, chemistry doing their part, hematology doing their part. If we didn't work cohesively, we know that there would be a patient impact. But when you think about working as a cohesive team within each discipline, is where you can sometimes have that breakdown, where you can have that loss of confidence, where you can have productivity that's not as high as it could be. And so, as I kind of level set what we're going to be talking about today, I wanted to give you a background of really what team cohesion is and why it's important for our medical laboratories. It's really important for the success of our teams to help build those strong, cooperative, and effective teams dedicated to the best possible care of our patients, as well as having our individual laboratories being those labs of choice for laboratorians who want to work with us, as we know and have seen with staffing issues. If the team is not cohesive, whether you have a lot of team members or a few team members, it can have an impact on your recruiting, on your retention, on many things outside of patient care and safety as it relates to the laboratory. Ladies, what do you think about that of, what team cohesion is and the importance that it play in our labs?
Yeah, so I love what you said about the common goals, having these common goals and having clear roles. You know, with blood bank knowing where what their role is, chemistry, and coming together with that. Another thing is the major challenge we're having now. If you're in a team that you feel as if there's a lot of things going in different direction, they're not happy, they're not working together, it's so easy for someone to say, you know what, I don't want to work here, there's just too much confusion, I'm not happy, and I'm gone. So I think it's so important right now for us to even understand how to have a cohesive team to really retain um, staffing at this time. So I think you made some real great points there, Taiwana.
I agree. And I think one of the main points to drive home during this episode is that team cohesion isn't necessarily going to be the team leaders, the manager, the responsibility, your lead tech, your pathologist. It's not going to be their responsibility to ensure it. Surely they've got a role that they can play in making sure that there's clarity in goals and making sure everybody understands what direction the laboratory should be going in. But when I think about this, the team that works together for any patient could be the laboratory and nursing. It could be first shift, second shift versus third shift. It could be the phlebotomist and the techs working together. And so there's so many different types of teams that it really takes every individual coming to work and being accountable for how they present in order to make sure that there is, cohesiveness in any dynamic that you're working in. Um, and just for me, looking at some of the challenges that I've seen at different places that I've worked in, um, that have had trouble achieving dynamics, like I said, whether it was between the lab and nursing, whether it was in the lab, there's always some type of first shift, has all of the people and they get all of the food and, they don't do any work. Then second shift, they, second shift has their stereotype. And then third shift just is holding it up all by themselves. And they don't get any recognition and nobody, they're the stepchildren. Or even if you have like an ambulatory component, there's that whole nobody thinks about us versus the mothership, quote unquote, where all the stuff happens. And so when you think about that, and I think about the different places that I've worked, there are a couple of main themes that have popped up when we've had problems with team cohesion. And the first one being role uncertainty. And we know right now with the workforce shortage, when there's changes in leadership or changes in structure, or, there's an interim position, a person filling in quickly, and then you hire a person, perhaps the interim is actually training their boss for a little bit or actually showing them the ropes. There can be an opportunity for there to be a bit of either shared responsibility or overlap in responsibility or confusion amongst teams of who does what. And even if you think about it from a bench level, when you look at maintenance and when you look at, instrument functions, is it first shift's responsibility? Is it second shift's responsibility? If things aren't clearly defined, I like to say if something is everybody's job, it's nobody's job. And so there has to be some level of accountability. And when role uncertainty creeps in, that's one of the ways that I've seen, pockets of complications in team cohesion creep in. Obviously, the most obvious thing, just toxic work members, personality conflicts, when there's unresolved issues amongst the team. And I would say with laboratorians, many of us inherently being introverts and not really having all the tools that we need, whether it's because you're introvert or just because you're early in your career, to call out conflict or properly resolve conflict, then that obviously leads to cohesion, because there's a lack of trust. There's people trying to quote unquote cover themselves and perhaps doing extra work. You lose productivity because people are focused more on the team dynamics than they are the actual work. And so that's always something to look out for. And then the last thing that I've seen is when managers or management isn't properly managing their talent. And what I mean by that is everybody has high performers, middle performers, and low performers. And when there's talent differences, when obviously everybody is going to do things at different speeds than others. And when some people on your team contribute more or faster or can draw 10 pages in an hour, or they're just superstar phlebotomists, or, techs that can really multitask versus techs that may be slower at reading diffs or things like that. When somebody's productivity level is drastically different than another person's, and you're not managing that appropriately, the high performers, the people who have the higher productivity levels, can start to feel slighted. They always put me with, Taiwan or alone, and they slower, and I end up having to work, and you just start to end up feeling a little bit slighted. And so, without managing all those things correctly, I think management can start to have cohesion problems. And just like all the things that we said, that leads to resentment, that leads to lack of engagement, that leads to which ultimately leads to retention issues, which we've done countless number of episodes on how to retain your staff and how to work to build your teams. And so what do you ladies think? What are some of the things you guys have seen in laboratories?
Yeah, I think you mentioned some great points, Stephanie. One of the things that has come to mind as I'm preparing for an upcoming talk is it's kind of exacerbated with COVID, but the idea of essential and unessential personnel. So as I was preparing for that talk, what it did is it created a divide between teams, because as you heard through COVID, it was always essential personnel. You have to be at work, essential personnel. But when we think about members of our laboratory team, of course, our testing personnel, because our hospitals are 24/7, but some of our, administrative staff or even support staff does not have to be in the laboratory 24/7. And so the impact of that, of people hearing that their role was not essential during a global pandemic, created some mental health disparities. And so there's documented research around that, and you can look and see why some people did not return to the uh, work field or back to the market. But just as you were talking, it made me think about that, is that, sometimes we have inequities within our teams, which could create that or lose that cohesion between the teams, especially if you have, where we're always talking about some groups being essential and some groups being basically non-essential is what people are hearing. So that was something that kind of made me think a little bit different as I was doing my research for that talk. But as we were talking about it here, if you are a member of a team, and your role was viewed as non-essential, which some people may equate that to non-important, which we know that that's not true, could lead to that dissension amongst our teams, which we really can't have that.
Yeah. And for me, I, for me, it's a lot of team activities that I would see on the overnight shift that they'll go out to breakfast after work, or they'll do a lot of things out of the lab. And I found that that team at the time, they'll help each other, they understood each other better. And then there are other shifts that is just work, 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 and not a lot of fun activities where they can actually get to know each other. And so for that, I find that there's less cohesion when they don't do things together for fun. And then for me, I remember working on a weekend. It was just a small group of us, 5 people every weekend. And it was going to work to me was like going on vacation. My husband was like, I can't even believe that you're going to work. It's like, it's just so exciting. We're at work, we're talking, we're outside of work, we're talking. The small group that we did a lot together and we shared a lot together. So that made a big difference. So I'm going to talk a little about what we can actually do, like some of the methods that our listeners can use to improve team cohesion in their lab. And I have a list here. A lot of these Taiwana and Stephanie mentioned. So one of the first thing I would say is have the team a part of your vision and the goals that you set for your lab. So make sure they are aware of these goals and they're working towards these goals. So some of these goals could be quality goals, patient safety goals, or just goals that you set maybe from a Gallup score that you're saying, let's work together as a team towards this, or maybe it could be a survey, but just have your team work together to set those goals. So have them sit down, maybe as part of a committee or a planning meeting. And you always hear, I don't know, you hear this expression that people support what they create. So if they're part of that common goal for the lab, they tend to support it together as a team. And so you're kind of working together like, okay, this is our thing. The second thing is, and that was mentioned again by Taiwana and Stephanie, have the team members know their roles and the importance of these roles in achieving the outcomes that you set. So if we're going to think internally, the phlebotomists, if the phlebotomists are aware of how the quality specimen that they draw, how that will help with patient care, like a specimen that may have IV contamination, if they understand how that affect the result and that affect the patient, and they know what their role is and the value of that role, that's so important. Processors knowing that accurately accessioning their specimens, so that's internally. So for our scientists, of course, a lot of times we don't think about the connection to the patients because we're so busy working every day. So sometimes we just need to be reminded of our roles. Example, people are doing like whole blood lactate or blood culture. How is that helping a patient that comes in with sepsis? How are we helping maybe with stroke patients? How are we helping with patient discharges? I think Stephanie spoke about that. So connecting what we do with our outcomes is so important. Another thing is allowing all of us as a team to be open when it comes to communication and feel safe. Safe with communication, whether or not we're in a meeting, communicating any changes that happen in the lab, and So for me, when you think of communication with changes, an example I can think about is we were moving to total lab automation. And just from the design, those were being put up on the board. So they could see the whole journey, so they could give feedback. They were part of the design, all the questions that could be asked, and then follow through the whole progress. So people feel as if I'm part of this. This is my team. This is what we're doing. It's not just what leadership is doing, but what we're doing as a team. So they can give feedback to any changes and encouraging that environment of trust to just talk about things is so important. So encourage safe communication. Another thing is encourage professional and personal development as a team. So I know, like, as a team, you can have your team presenting at conferences, and they're presenting on something that's done as a team. Presenting as at nursing training, we had our team, different teams coming together to present during Nursing Skills Day. So you'd have all the phlebotomists designing their table and presenting. You have the analyzing area, have blood bank. And so they worked together as a team and they presented together as a team. So that gave them pride as a team. So that encouragement for growth and professional, just professional and personal growth. Now, when it comes to conflict, normalize conflict as something that will happen. I know a lot of people are afraid of conflict, or we should not have conflict. If we have a great lab, a great team, we shouldn't have conflict. But normalizing conflict as something that will happen, but how do we address it as a team so that the teams don't feel as if because we have a conflict, now our team is fractured. Allow that to grow the team. So when people make these commitment or they feel accountable, so if I have a conflict, even though I may think it's not my fault, then I should take that accountability to help to resolve it so I can come up with a great outcome. Actually, I just was part of a conflict. We were doing a major project and there was a lot of misunderstanding. We had to take responsibility as individuals in the team to say, this is the goal of the project, and we're not going to allow conflict to stop this project. So how can we be accountable and work together to come up with some kind of common ground to move forward? And I'm so proud the way we actually resolve these conflicts in order to move forward. And a lot of times we have to do that as role model for the team members to follow, to know that it's okay to have conflict, but take responsibility or maybe be accountable. I shouldn't necessarily be responsible, but be accountable for the outcomes of the conflict. I have two more, and plan frequent team building activities. Because so many times we're so busy with work, no fun. It's so important to plan activities where the team can do things together and see how they handle things together. And sometimes team building could be part of like a committee or a project. That could be team building. But it's good to sometimes get outside of work, go to breakfast, go on a picnic. A lot of team building that we've done, we have the farmers market that would come, and we ask the teams to go together. They're in a different environment, go to the farmers market together, and that's during their lunchtime. So that's so important. And also, the team members can come up with ideas for team building. So the last thing is celebrate achievements. So give frequent feedback on performances. I know we set goals like quality measures and safety measures. As a team, we could be saying, oh, our phlebotomy team was so great when it came to hand hygiene, or when it came to blood blood culture contamination, and you're celebrating as a team. We're doing this together as a team. We're achieving our goals as a team. Celebrate when they do work together, because a lot of times what I find is that people tend to say this is Lona's project, and Lona, because Lona is leading it, oh, this is Lona's project, she did so well. And then there's so many other people who are part of the team. Don't name a project by the name of the person that's leading it. So many people are part of a project. So celebrate as a team whenever you do well in a project, and celebrate the outcomes from these projects. Okay, so I know it was quite a bit. The team being part of the vision, knowing their roles as part of the vision and the outcome, involving all team members in important projects because you have different diverse talents and expertise. Encourage safe and open communication, encourage professional and personal development as a team, normalize conflict and show how it can be resolved, plan frequent team building activities, and celebrate achievements. Stephanie and Taiwana, what do you guys think?
Lona, that was a lot of great examples. I love when you said normalize conflict, because I think that is one of the single most important things that we can do with our teams. And when I mentor other people in management, I talk about that because so many times people who are in management or in leadership get discouraged when there's problems on their teams. And I always say, go to work anticipating that there will be a problem. That's your job security. That's why you're there. That's if there were no problems, we would need no managers. We would need no supervisors. Everything would run on autopilot. And so I think normalizing conflicts within a team, because we all have different personalities, we all have different thought processes. But understanding that when there is conflict, we've got a process that we've also normalized within this team to handle that conflict in a constructive way, in a way that includes everybody and respects everybody's opinion, and then moves us out of the conflict back towards the goal, is super important. And then I can't stress it enough. You have to be responsible for you and the way you present to work. I was helping employees with a conflict in one of our departments. And they work on a different shift. And it was 3 employees, and I asked one of them, what is your desired resolution after you rattled off all of these things that are going on? And it really just amounted to gossip. And I asked, what is your desired resolution? And he said he just wanted it to stop. And I said, well, that is easy, because if you want this to stop, then all y'all have to do is stop. You all hold the fix to this problem in your hand.
Take accountability, right?
If you don't want there to be any more gossip on your shift, then you just need to not gossip on your shift. I mean, we're done. You have to manage yourself. You have to lead by example. Of course, work with your management team to remove any barriers or challenges that are in you guys' way of being a cohesive team. But definitely, as you hire new employees, as you bring new people on the team, establish a norm, a rule, some type of foundation that we will all agree to. And as we bring new people on the team, this is what we've committed to as a team. When there's a conflict, we do X, Y, and Z. And when you bring a new person on the team, they may not know your team norms. And so you need to let them know, I know you're a new person on our team, but we don't talk about each other here. I know you're a new person on our team, but, we don't use our cell phones. And so hold each other accountable so that the entire team can be successful. What do you think, Tawana?
Yeah, I thought those were great points. The only thing that I would add to that is creating that sense of belonging. So whether you have various shifts or various locations, creating that environment where team members feel included, but they also feel like they belong. I know sometimes when sites or individual hospitals become a system, sometimes you may not feel that cohesion, especially as the system is starting to bring in additional laboratories. So creating that environment, establishing that norm for your system and what that is supposed to be. Also, communicate, and over communicate. I think with teams, at the end of every team is a person, right? And we all see things different. We all hear things different. And so we don't want to assume anything, but communicating with your team in various forms. So that might be, verbal rounding, that might be email, that might be text message if that works for your team. That it might be a communication board, it might be an electronic board, it might be Teams. So figuring out what will work for your group and communicating. It seems like when teams start to get disconnected is because there is a gap in communication. And then the last thing that I would like to leave the listeners with around this topic. So we've covered many episodes, 13 to be exact, on team development. So today we have just covered the tip of the iceberg on creating that cohesive team. But if you want to dive in more on the topic, you can go to elaboratetopics.directimpactbroadcasting.com. That'll take you directly to this particular podcast, and you can type in team, and you will find 13 different episodes among the 3 seasons. But a few that I will highlight, I think that will be added bonuses for this particular episode, is season 1, episode 17, Designing Your Ideal Team. Season 1, episode 65, Improve and Empower Your Team. Season 2, episode 26, Am I Developing a Team That Will Last? And season 2, episode 45, Getting the Most Out of Your Multi-Generational Team. Now, I just highlighted 4 episodes around teams, but know that if you type in team, there are at least 13 episodes out there. So you can go back to our library and listen to some of those episodes that will help you and your team be more cohesive, understand one another, communicate with one another, be able to navigate that conflict, and have the team that you truly desire.
Wow. Thanks so much, Tawana, for helping the listener to navigate and search for different topics. I love that. So there's so many topics that we have, but we're really excited that we were able to share this other episode on teams with you. And you, of course, can listen to this and other episodes on directimpactbroadcasting.com. That's the same website that Tawana just shared. And we're also on LabVine. So you can visit LabVine and find us on VineStream. You can find all our episodes there, or you can also listen to us on any of your podcast platforms that your favorite podcast platforms. We also have a group on Facebook and LinkedIn, so you can join our group there. And you can also email us at elaboratetopics@directimpactbroadcasting.com. If you have questions or if you want to be a guest on the show, there's also a place you can actually request to be a guest on the show when you log into directimpactbroadcasting.com. So until we talk to you again, every Tuesday, there's a new episode. So see you then.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Elaborate Topics, where your hosts discussed relevant strategies for laboratory professionals. Please subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform and listen to us on directimpactbroadcasting.com. Stay tuned for another episode with information you can use to excel in your laboratory career.